do your own thing. Just don't pay attention to what anybody's saying. Just if you love it, then other people will love it.
Welcome to Imagined Here, where you will hear stories of local creative talent. Let's get started with your host, Andy Crowner.
Today, for our very first interview, we sit down with McKenna McCaw from Neat and Navy Blue. Neat and Navy Blue creates handcrafted candles, soaps, diffusers, sprays, and a lot of other things that will just really make your home or car smell good. I think one of the interesting things as you listen to McKenna's story is you're actually listening to the beginning story of this podcast. You'll hear during this podcast that I have a few audio issues still to work out. And just like you, as you're beginning your craft or beginning to create what you want to create, you'll go through some of these same growing pains that I go through now, and you hear McKenna talk about during her interview. Thanks for listening, and here's the interview with McKenna McCaw. All right, McKenna McCaw, thank you very much for joining the podcast. You're from Neat and Navy Blue in Marengo, Iowa, which is just outside of Iowa City. So thanks again, McKenna, for joining us, and welcome to the podcast. Why don't you tell us just a little bit about yourself, what you create, and give us a little glimpse into your personal life.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm super flattered that you invited me on. I am 36, and I have 2 children. My husband is a farmer, and I started this back in 2014. And it was just a way for me to kind of have an outlet. I was a stay-at-home mom, and it was with my second child. And so I was kind of going stir crazy and wanted to do something. And so I redid a piece of furniture with my dad, and I loved it. So I decided, hey, I'm going to take it to the next level. So.
Excellent. So what were you doing before Neat and Navy Blue?
Well, when I just got married, I was working as a phlebotomist at BioLife. And then when we had our first child, Jack, I ended up quitting and staying home with him full time.
So take us to kind of the first days here when you were actually getting started with Neat and Navy Blue side. The day you started, the moment you actually said, okay, I can do this and actually start creating this. Take us to that day.
Well, I'd refinished a few pieces of furniture, and a friend was like, oh my gosh, I love that. Will you do this for me? And then my mother-in-law wanted me to do a piece, and then I was like, wow, I think that maybe people like what I'm doing. And so I kind of, at that point had, a dozen or so pieces that I was like, I need to do something with these. So I signed up for Watcheer Flea Market in Watcheer, Iowa. I don't know if you know of that, but it was probably not the best idea for me to do that flea market just because it is a true flea market. People go there for junk. And here I was set up with all of these finished pieces, and if I had a dime for all the advice I gave away that day, I would have done great. I only sold one piece of furniture, so I quickly realized that I probably was at the wrong market, but I didn't let that get me down. I came home, I started a Facebook page, I listed everything on Craigslist and then the Facebook marketplace, and they all sold within a week, so I was happy.
So, McKenna, what made the switch to candles? Why that decision?
Well, that came about probably a year later when I was doing my first big market. It was a handmade, like a maker's market, and it was actually a good maker's market, and they're having their fall market this weekend in Tipton, Iowa. Anyway, I wanted to have more small things incorporated because with just the furniture, it looked kind of bare. So I would go and buy vintage decor, go to Goodwill and find stuff to stage with my furniture. And I wanted to have more handmade items. My friend who was a furniture painter, she was also doing candles. And I was like, maybe I'll try that. And I ended up loving it. So.
All right. Well, one thing we all have in common, McKenna, is we have a fear of actually getting started to create. And of course, this is my first podcast right here with you today. So
Right.
I can really kind of sympathize that. So tell me, in the very beginning, before you actually started restoring furniture or making candles and soaps and all those things, what really kind of held you back from starting to create from yourself, and how did you finally conquer that fear?
Um, I guess I never really had anything holding me back. It was just a matter of I kind of stumbled into it. And I mean, it ended up being the best thing for me because I was really struggling. Like as a stay-at-home mom, I know other moms will relate to this, that you just kind of feel isolated from adult, interaction. And so finding that really helped me kind of have my own thing instead of just being, a wife and a mother. So, but I really didn't have any hurdles. I was very lucky when I started that my husband was very supportive and, my family was very supportive. When I would go to markets, they would watch our kids and stuff like that. So, I didn't have to overcome a fear. I kind of went for it. So,
Right. So this was not only just an outlet to create, but also to get out of the house and do some other things.
right. Yes.
Well, in everybody's journey, we've all kind of been given some advice along the way. What's one piece of advice that's really stood out to you?
Do your own thing. Just don't pay attention to what anybody's saying. Just if you love it, then other people will love it. That's kind of, yeah.
That's great. I think we all get kind of stuck in that mode, especially now with social media. Everybody's so negative. Something you
Right.
post out there, there's always a comment.
Always.
So,
Always.
constantly. Yeah, it doesn't really matter how good we do. There's always somebody that wants to drag us down. So that's
Absolutely.
right. So tell us, on that note, we've all kind of failed before in life and learned from those failures. So again, take us to the day of kind of one of your biggest failures along the way and tell us about what you learned from it.
Well, my biggest failure was when let's see, I can't remember what year it was. It was, I think, probably 2 years into candle making, and I had like a fairly big order. As far as like when I started, it was pretty big, and I was super excited about it. And for whatever reason, I don't know if I got just too excited and wasn't paying attention, or maybe thought I had everything down, but I didn't. And my recipe, I ended up having too much fragrance oil in the wax, and so the entire like 5 dozen candles that I made were ruined. Like they wouldn't stay lit. They were just, it was a wash. So that was huge, and I was devastated, and I was like, I mean, that's a lot of product to have to pitch. And I ended up rectifying it by like, I won't go into all the process, but I ended up saving the wax and kind of reforming it into like wax melts instead that didn't need a wick. So, but that was a huge, but you have to keep going. Like it was like, pay attention, McKenna, like to how many ounces. That's what it was. It was because I went from like making smaller batches, like maybe a dozen at a time, to like I made 5 dozen at one time. And I think my math was off, honestly.
Those growth pains. Yeah. You start doing something you're not used to all of a sudden, and it's
right.
a lot harder to do.
Yeah. So I learned real quick too. Now all my formulations, I do them twice just to make sure I'm adding the right amount of stuff now.
Well, thank you very much for sharing that story with us. And let's switch gears a little bit then to tell us a story of kind of your I made it moment. And maybe you haven't got all the way there yet to where you want to go, but what's kind of been the big moment for you so far?
In furniture, that one's easy. It was when the owner of Old Barn Milk Paint contacted me, and she wanted me to be a brand rep. That was like huge. And then when like some of the other big, like Miss Mustard Seed Milk Paint and a couple of the other old fashioned milk paint company, when they started sharing my projects, that was huge. I mean, there's really nothing better than recognition from the brands that you love and that you actually use. So, obviously to get free paint, that was amazing. So that was my furniture. Like, oh my God, like people really do like my stuff. And General Finishes Milk Paint ended up sharing some of my work at one of their painting expos. And so that, I mean, that's, you can't get any more, any better validation than that. So
yeah, it's always great to get that validation from the people we respect and look up to. And, that's the hard part of what we talked about earlier with, hearing the comments from other people and trying to block out some of the negatives, but yet the positives mean so much to you as well. So
yeah, they do.
It's a challenge to kind of balance those out.
Mm-hmm. And I think with the candles, I haven't really quite gotten there yet. I have a goal to reach however many wholesale clients, and then that will be my moment, and I'm about halfway there. So
all right, well, maybe we'll have you back on when you get all the way there and hear a little bit more of that story too.
There you go.
So tell us now, what projects are coming up? What are you working on right now?
Actually, right now I have a new product coming out. I'd been wanting to do some kind of air freshener for a while, whether it be for your car or wherever. And I had tried a couple things and failed. And finally I came up with these. They're actually just like beads, wood beads with a tassel on them. And I've seen tassels all over. They're all over Pinterest and Instagram, and right. they're pretty big right now in home decor. And I thought, well, why don't I add something that is scented to that? And so we did some trials, and they ended up lasting quite a while. I was like, this is great. We can do this. So I have some for the home, and then I'm just coming out with ones for the car, smaller version. So that's exciting.
So when you launch a new product today, are you mostly going online through your own website, or where all are these for sale today?
On my website, and I generally put out like the launch information first to my email subscribers and kind of let them get first dibs. And then I will tell, my followers on Instagram that I have this. And yeah.
So after that, what kind of things are you looking at for the future in the next couple of years? Any other big plans, new products, those kind of things?
I think we're all trying to come up with the next big thing in our little niche. But I just want to keep it simple. I'm not trying to get too crazy. So just perfect what I have already.
Sometimes just kind of sticking with what works and following some trends and continuing to get the name out there is the way to go instead of continuing to just change everything every day.
Mm-hmm.
So who has influenced you and specifically what you create?
Well, I guess my husband is my biggest influence, just because he is a business owner as well and the hardest working person I know. And so I always felt like I needed to keep pace with him. So he pushes me to, do better and do my best. But obviously he's not inspiring me with my candles. He's a farmer. So I guess I follow a lot of people on Instagram that are doing the same thing. They're mothers, they're candle makers or furniture painters or whatever. And I draw a lot of inspiration from them, just seeing their journeys as well through this whole process together. So I would say that community is super inspiring. It's just people that I've known throughout doing furniture, and then new people are coming on to follow me that also have candle businesses. So I like seeing what, other small candle companies are doing versus like the bigger people.
I know we talked a little bit pre-show about books. And so just if you would give me a quick recommendation of a book you think our listeners should check out, or a book you've recently kind of gifted or received.
Well, I guess the last one I read is like a kind of self-help type book, and it's called F-U-C-K Yourself. Right. And it's kind of about how you are the one that's standing in your own way, and that you need to get out of your own head to move forward, and just kind of like that kind of premise.
I think that really kind of resonates with the people that are going to be listening to this podcast.
Absolutely.
I think a lot of us really want to start creating or have something maybe we'd even do as just a hobby, but we're afraid to put it out there. And that sounds like a pretty good book for somebody listening to this podcast to go check out. So thank you very much for sharing that with us.
You bet.
Imagined Here listeners, we know that you like audiobooks, so we've teamed up with Audible to bring you a special offer. Visit imaginedhere.com/audible for a free 30-day Audible trial and 2 free audiobooks. You can cancel at any time, and you get to keep your audiobooks forever. So, McKenna, what is one of the best physical gifts you've received or given under $100?
Well, that's easy. I like to give away free stuff of mine. I like to do giveaways, and then once in a while I'll throw in new stuff for returning customers, just because it just feels good to give stuff away.
You know, one of the best parts about this being a more local podcast is we can talk about kind of events and venues that people can go to right here. You know, they're not in New York or something. They're within
Sure.
an hour or so away. So what do you what is like one of your favorite venues or events you've set up at, and maybe you sold there, or maybe you just go and visit that, but it kind of has to do with, you know, your crafts and the candle making and the restoration?
Hands down, that would be the Good Makers Market. It was by far my favorite market I've ever done. The gal who hosts it is amazing as a host. And she also owns a shop in Iowa City with a couple other amazing women who are makers, the shop Iowa City. But that market is going on this weekend. It is just a great time to get out, and there's food trucks and there's music and there's, you know, anything you can think of that is made by a local artisan, it will be there. So that would be my favorite venue.
There's something about food trucks these days that always makes me interested, so I might have to go check it out.
Oh yeah, and she's got 4, so, and they're all delicious. We've had all of the food, so.
Have you seen the Chef Show on Netflix?
No, I have not.
It's a story of a guy that they actually made a movie about this guy that quits the restaurant business and opens a food truck. And while they were doing it, the guy trained to become a chef, the actor. And so he went in later with the guy that trained him and decided to make this food show. And it is just one of my favorite shows. I binge watch it all the time.
Oh, that's awesome.
So it's made me, every time there's a food truck, now I really want to go try it out.
Yeah, well, this weekend is the Good Makers Market in Tipton at the Cedar County Fairgrounds, I believe. So you could get your fix on food trucks.
So, McKenna, tell us a little bit. I've seen pictures of kind of your studio or where you make there. I assume it's in your house. Would you tell us a little bit about the gear and maybe the process of making the candles?
Yeah, so we live out in the country, and we have a big machine shed for equipment, and we actually turned one of the bays into my studio. And so I get to work just, I think it's like 85 steps from my door, which I counted it one day because why not? And I'm super fortunate. And then the gear I have in there, really honestly, if you don't have, you know, like right now I have a 100-pound melter, which obviously everybody's not going to have that until they get a little bit bigger, but the stuff that you need to start out with is fairly minimal. My husband made me a small 10-pound melter out of like a fry, like one of those fryers with the electric heaters.
Right.
But otherwise, I mean, honestly, just a stove and like a double broiler is really all, and a thermometer and some jars and wax. And it's, for someone who wanted to start a candle business, it's a fairly easy craft to get into. There's a lot of research that goes behind it because candle making it can be tricky and finicky, trying to figure out which fragrance and wick and jar and all of that go together to make the perfect, you know, combination or whatever. But as far as equipment goes, pretty low equipment list, really.
Have you ever created a new candle or scent and just really disliked the way it smelled?
Oh yeah. Yes. And that's another thing. When you have a fragrance and you mix it in a bottle or straight out of the bottle in like pure form, it can smell completely different than when you actually mix it with the wax and then burn it later. So I've had some that I'm like, oh wow, this is great, and then you burn it and you're like, whoa, nope. So yes, I've definitely had a lot of trial and error.
I can remember as a child, we had a candle in the house one day, and it was sitting above a heat register, and my mom yelled at me from another room, like, you know, what is that smell? What do we keep smelling? And it was this candle that for some reason just, it it stunk. It really stunk. And she's like, well, just throw it out. And so at the time, just being funny, I just opened the sliding glass door and actually threw the candle over the fence. So that's a story we always tell in my family. Be careful what you say about throwing it out.
Oh boy. That's funny.
All right. So kind of our last big question here, and I'd like you to take a couple minutes on this one, go a little in depth. If you started over today, and let's stick to kind of the candle process or, starting the online store, those kind of things. If you started over today knowing all that you know now, how would you begin?
Research. I mean, that's pretty much the same way I started with the refinishing and candle making is research. I read as many blogs as I could. I found as much information as I could on, different waxes, different fragrance oil companies, different, just everything, how to make them. You really need to start with that, I would say. And same with the furniture. I researched different paints and how they acted on different woods and all of that stuff to get, before you invest a lot of money in what you're going to do, you need to know how to do it first, I guess. So yeah. And then the website thing, again, just research what works for you, which host and what has the easiest, especially when you're starting out, you want something that's user friendly and that you can build with, because it's not easy either. It was a lot of work putting the website together, a lot of reading forums and YouTube videos on how to do stuff or whatever. So, but just, put the time in to do the research, I would say, on whatever you're going after.
That's the great part of starting a business like that today, or even if it's just a hobby, is that information is out there on the web and on YouTube. There's tons of it. There's more than you can even consume.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's been, everything I've learned, whether it be photography or even the audio we're doing right now. I mean, it's pretty much all come from sitting and watching YouTube videos or just reading on, various forums and places on Google.
Same. Yeah, exactly the same.
Okay, McKenna, well, why don't you leave us with kind of some parting guidance and tell us exactly where you'd like, people that are interested in learning more about Neat and Navy Blue, tell us where they can find you.
Well, I'm on Instagram and Facebook under Neat and Navy Blue, and then also my website, neatandnavyblue.com. That's kind of where I am, and I'll just go ahead and pass the same advice on to the next person that I received, which is do what you love, and other people will love it as well.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate you being here, and congratulations on being our first guest on the podcast.
Yeah, that's so exciting. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thanks. We really appreciate it, and we will talk to you again very soon.
All right.
Imagined listeners, head on over to imagined and type McKenna or Neat and Navy Blue in the search bar, and the show notes page will show up with all the information we talked about today. Thanks for listening, and we will catch you in the next episode.